March 2nd, Monday, after a big, crazy weekend where I happen to be reporting from the war zone. Today we have Bernard Berchet and Bob Morris, and I'm sure we're going to talk about oil and gas. Because this morning we saw Qatar Energy shut off their LNG plants, which sent European gas prices up 50%. And earlier today, when you guys are all asleep, and this is the end of the day for me, the Saudis one of their major refineries got hit, and that's about 7% of the world's oil went through. So, Bob, let's talk about it. Energy, you're back, baby.
Thanks. So, for our audience here, when you said you're in the war zone, you're literally in the war zone. Tell everybody where you're at.
Yeah. So I'm in the United Arab Emirates. If we had a little map, I should have sent Jen the map. I'm definitely in the mix. Like, I could probably swim to Iran from here.
Yeah.
And I was here for work for an AI thing, nothing related to finance, or I guess technically a little bit, but or any wanting to be in a war zone. And then I was a little complacent because we talked about it, and I think the market kind of knew that we'd have that Trump, they were talking about it, and there was a bunch of carrier groups and whatever. And I had a meeting on Saturday, so I stayed. And that morning I woke up, and basically here's my takeaway, is that I knew when I heard missiles from my hotel explode that I was like, God damn it, like, this is a different beast. And I think that basically the Iranians are kind of doing if you guys remember the movie Scarface, they're doing the Tony Montana strategy of just going out guns blazing with the hope that that will cause pressure on the U.S. by their, allies or whatever, or in the region, to then step back. And so, yeah, I saw the Fairmont get bombed by a drone like 1,000 meters from me. I saw a lot of missiles get intercepted. And as a boy from Wisconsin, it was my first war zone experience.
All right. Well, stay safe, and hopefully you can get out of there soon. But yeah, so on Friday we said that we could come back this week with some exciting or interesting developments, which is certainly what has occurred here. I think, to the surprise to a lot of people, that the U.S. and Israel decided to strike on Saturday at 8 a.m. And we had said on Friday that if there was some breakout of war, that oil could spike to $75, $80 a barrel. And, we're a little bit shy of that. WTI is right here around $70 a barrel. And, of course, everyone knows that's because Iran's is blocking the Strait of Hormuz, and that scared everybody back. The insurance companies raising rates, and tankers not wanting to try and even venture through the Strait of Hormuz. And as you pointed out, Iraq has shut down, for now, all of their LNG export capacity or operations. So, all the energy stocks up this morning, except for the gas names, interestingly, U.S. gas names, because as you pointed out, even though European natural gas prices, which are dependent on Middle East LNG, are up 50%, it really hasn't impacted the U.S. here, particularly given that we're a net LNG exporter and we export pretty much all that we can capacity-wise. And in the meantime, we're coming out of the winter into the shoulder period heading in the summer. So there's not a lot of upward pressure on U.S. natural gas prices, although obviously this is positive for any LNG exports and, as you pointed out, European gas. But as far as oil, clearly you, on the one hand, can argue that there's no way that the U.S. and Israel is going to allow Iran to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. But in the meantime, obviously, Iran has some fire capability to continue to shoot missiles and continue to cause fear that no one wants to risk going through the Strait of Hormuz. And as I said, the insurance companies have boosted their rates 50, 100%. So everybody's holding back for now, waiting to see how this gets resolved or settled. Trump said that this is going to last 4 weeks. The problem is that when you look at what's trying to go on here, and clearly the U.S. and Israel are trying to push for regime change, you've got a far left radical ruling party in Iran, although Khomeini is dead, that they're not in this for sort of a resolution or peaceful coexistence. For them, this is a religious war. I mean, they're in it to the death. And so that's why, as you pointed out, they're going out guns blazing, Tony Montana style, is that we got here because in the negotiations, at one point, the U.S. offered to provide them fuel grade uranium forever, just as long as they would stop their enrichment. And the one sticking point was they would not halt enrichment. Why? Because they don't want to ever give up the possibility or the capability to make a nuclear weapon. And so that was sort of the breaking point where I believe the U.S. and Israel said, look, they're never going to give in on this. Clearly, we know what their objective is. The Iranian constitution does not directly call for the annihilation of Israel, but it calls for direct opposition to the Zionist regime or occupiers of Palestine. So this is something, again, I believe, if the far left radical Islamic Party remains in power in any form or fashion, they're in it to the death. And so that's why you've got to, U.S. and Israel believe they have to totally, completely annihilate any military capability whatsoever in Iran and hope that then there's the people of Iran are able to affect the regime change that's more friendly, more democratic to the Western world. So my point is that this is not going to be over in a few days. And I think that, as Trump said, this is going to take 4 weeks, that's very likely the case, which is going to keep the markets on edge, which means that oil's not pulling back to $60 a barrel again anytime soon. Net, this is all positive for the energy stocks. They're going to be volatile. They're going to jump around. But as we pointed out a week ago, on the E&P side, the most leveraged names to oil that you want to stick in or own are CNQ, Apache, Oxy, Devon, EOG, and then Chevron and Exxon on the integrated oil side. We're not selling anything. We're not writing covered calls here. We're just sticking with these names and seeing how this plays out. But again, I think this is something where you're going to see oil hold up here, $70 a barrel or higher for weeks.
Can I ask a question, Bob? What do you think
Yeah.
happens longer term if this is successful and we do see regime change, a free Iran, an Iran that doesn't need to have the sanctions that the U.S. has on it for decades now, right? That's 12% of the world's oil supply. What structurally happens if that oil supply comes into of course it's going into the market now, but it's going in a restricted way? What happens if it goes in an unrestricted way?
Well, that's long term, obviously puts pressure on oil prices. That is a scenario where it's going to take a long time to rebuild or sort of put the infrastructure in place, although oil's flowing today. Put in the infrastructure to flow a lot more oil. It's not Venezuela in that everything's being held together by duct tape, but it's a situation where ultimately there will be more free-flowing oil out of Iran, which should then put pressure on oil prices to put them back closer to $60 a barrel. Then it becomes a matter of, again, OPEC, what they want to do as far as how much production they continue to restrain or how much of the curtailed production they continue to put back in the market and how they try to manage the global oil price. But it's also positive for the economy globally in the sense that you probably have lower oil prices than where we are today. And you have a country that's growing and there's investment and there's going to be, if it comes into a situation where there's regime change and it's more democratic friendly country to the West, there's going to be billions of dollars of investment in Iran to bring that country up to, Western world standards, so to speak, to keep them on the track of saying, hey, this is a lot better life we have now being a democratic society with investment, with all this happening than we were before. So in the long run, I think it's positive for the global economy. And I think it does, your oil prices are probably back down closer to $60 a barrel, $60, $65 a barrel. And again, it's a matter of what OPEC decides to do. And if you're looking at 2 to 3 years, we don't have the supply overhang probably with economic growth that a lot we're forecasting going into this year, absent what's occurring today.
What do we know about the state of their infrastructure? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to give a little insight about why you should not anticipate this to be over soon. Since I'm over here and I'm talking to lots of people who are, like I have a lot of conversations, so it's a little different than, being at home. The interceptor missiles that they have are $15 million a pop, okay? And this interceptor systems last for about 3 days. And so the Iranians know this. So the first couple days they're putting drones, and the one I saw was a drone, and then these bullshit rockets, and there's a huge cost differential. So essentially it's like playing chess where you just go let your pawns wipe out the field. now in the last 12, 15 hours they've started putting ballistic missiles out. And again, there's a 3-day capacity to these receptor systems. One of my buddies is friends with the guy who had installed this, and so it's a real issue where this can escalate, and it's going to continue because that's going to be the strategy to wear them down and put pressure on them. And especially here, I'm in the UAE, which has this huge tourism business. Like, they're not interested in this. Like, I'm sitting in a villa with a family that's also Americans who just, a lot of people who just moved to Dubai because the city's been booming and great. And so basically this puts a huge damper on that. Like, oh well, you're getting 4% tax. Well, you paid. There's a price for everything in life, and the exchange you got for that low tax was there might see missiles over your head. You just didn't know it, right? And so I think that I would be very, very weary of thinking this is going to de-escalate anytime soon.
And those interceptor systems are in just Israel or all the surrounding Arab countries, or where are those located?
Every country. I literally saw 5 missiles get intercepted with my eyes this weekend. So that was a new experience. But yes, it's worked very well. I think they've intercepted about 94% of the missiles and drones. The drones are tougher, but the point is, forget about that. It's just that they can go the cost differential of a $50,000 drone or maybe a $200,000 rocket versus a $15 million interceptor missile. That adds up fast, right? So they're probably, I don't know, probably over $1 billion in interceptor missiles into the weekend already. You know what I'm saying? And so you just keep barraging them and barraging them and barraging them. And so I think that's what's going on. I mean, even today when you guys are asleep, the 2 major energy infrastructures that got hit, it's not the kind of thing you see if things are de-escalating. That's all I'm trying to say.
And those intercepted
He's really
missiles
managed to run their defense missiles for months on end. Is it that they're more sophisticated? Did they just have a deeper reserve of these anti?
Who are you talking about?
Israelis. I mean, they've been running them for months.
No. Actually, last summer, when they had the Iran-Israel thing on day 3 or 4, they started getting a lot more through. And basically, the Golden Dome kind of ran out of juice. These things can't run forever. They're not there's battery capacity and then there's also missile capacity. So that's not something you think about because in America we don't have missiles over our head. So Americans are very myself included until this weekend. You don't think about these things, right? But this system can't just run on endlessly.
Yeah.
And it also in Israel.
Must be a different kind of system because they had months on end of stuff coming in from Gaza, but probably at lower altitude with less sophistication. Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. I'd have to do more work to have an opinion on that. But I know that when Iranians last summer did that, by the 3rd or 4th day of the campaign, they started really doing a lot more damage because it was kind of out of gas, basically.
So those interceptor missile systems, do they run out after 3 days, or do they have to pause and reload?
I don't know if they exactly run out, but I think that the efficacy of blocking, so if you're at a 92, 94% intercept rate, which is what UAE is running right now, it starts to go down. So no one really, myself included, I'll just give you the exact how it worked. I remember hearing that, I was like, okay, fine, Middle East experience, I was casual. Then I saw them get intercepted, and I was like, oof, okay. And then we were going to go to dinner because that's the reason I stayed. And then I saw the Fairmont get hit. And there was this escalation. And so when you actually see buildings get hit is I think where people start to absolutely lose their shit, basically. And so while the interceptor has been working, it's been fine. But, they hit the airport twice. They hit the Atlantis. They've hit the Fairmont. They've hit a couple of things. They've been steadily going to it. And I'm just telling you, that's my view of being over here on the ground is that's what they're doing. Their strategy is to keep throwing pawns at them and wear out the system and then start to increase it and put pressure more and more on the Gulf states. And then now, you had one of the Saudi officials being oh, the U.S. has abandoned us. So creating stress between these regionals and the United States. And what I've read is the United States has a munitions, not unlimited inventory, just the same as I'm saying about these interceptors, so that they're trying to get this done as fast as possible because they have reliance in supply chains that is a fragility as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces here, basically.
The one thing also I'd throw out there that nobody's mentioned, and sort of maybe it's a black swan event, but in a scorched earth strategy, if they appear or perceive they're losing and all hope is lost, do they go the route of what Iraq did back 20 years ago and set all their oil fields on fire and say, look, this is over, we're going to lose, but we're going to burn the rest of the world by driving oil to $100 a barrel because we're going to blow up or set all our oil facilities on fire, which Iraq did, remember, during the Iraq war. So I don't know. Nobody's mentioned that, but it's just something to keep in mind if in this scorched earth strategy they go out guns blazing if they know that they have no hope.
Right. I guess that's what I'm trying to say is that like when I heard that first missile, all I could think of was Tony Montana being like, I'm going to take as many of you out as I go down. But I do think that the strategy is to put pressure on these people where the citizens are like, hey, this is enough. And hey, the world's like, Europeans aren't very happy about 50% higher gas today. I'll tell you that. And oil prices are up 8-10%, since last week, and it had already been bid up into this because people anticipated it. This is all things that pressure other places to be like, oh, you really want to do this? Like, let's see how much pain you can take, basically. And I think that's their only strategy. So it's either, hey, you guys bend the knee, or we're going out in the, blaze of glory, basically.
Yeah. So in any case, this isn't over anytime soon, and oil's going to hold up here at these levels, if not higher, as this goes on.
I bought the first oil future I bought in a long time. Last night I was talking in my other podcast that I thought, everybody wanted to fade it. They faded it 73 to 70, and it was like, because you just know that worked so many times. And like the only reason I had that insight is because I'm over here, and I was like, you wait for it. Like tomorrow's not going to be de-escalating. It's going to escalate, and it did escalate big, and oil popped back up. And I don't really care what the dollar price is. I just don't think that people understand that this is not going to just go away, unfortunately, for everyone. But that is where this just feels very like the finale of this regime. Like they either get people to bend the knee because they can't take enough pain, or they're done, basically.
Yep.
Brennan, what were you going to say? Sorry about that.
I was just going to ask Bob what he thought the state of infrastructure was in Iranian oil, what the thinking is on that. I mean, we know that, so a bunch of the best companies have not been allowed to sell to them for a long time. Mm-hmm. There are other companies oilfield services companies that do business with them. Just curious how much opportunity there will be if that country opens up to infrastructure. People got so excited about Venezuela, which is obviously held together with tape and aluminum foil at this point. But, Iran's, I know, is supposed to be better than that, but probably not at the standards of most of the OPEC and Western countries. So just curious what the opportunities there.
Yeah, so they produce right now over 3 million barrels per day, which is, quite a bit above what it was in just 5 years ago, because I think the administrations here in the U.S. have sort of turned the blind eye to some of their ability to skirt the sanctions just to put more oil in the market to keep oil prices down. But the infrastructure is not bad. It's not falling apart. And like I said, they could produce over 3 million, or they have been producing over 3 million barrels a day. But if they want to get up to 5, 6, 7 million barrels a day, it's going to take a lot of investment. There's not a lot of low-hanging fruit, as I understand it, there, that if you go in there and say, oh, within a few months, if we got full rain to turn open the valves, and we can open things up and all of a sudden produce 4 or 5 million barrels a day. So to get much above 3 million barrels a day, it's going to take some investment. But like I said, things aren't falling apart, but it would take a lot of investment to boost it significantly from here, just like in Venezuela. And as you pointed out, Venezuela is being held together by duct tape because there was no investment. Whereas Iran's continue to have money to invest in their oil infrastructure. I don't know how much outside investment they get, but all their oil's been being sold to, the exports have been sold to China and Russia. I mean, China, period. So.
I mean, look, Bob, I like the Schlumberger, Schlumberger seems like the natural thing. I think the thing about Schlumberger, and it's funny because, again, we've talked about this, Bob and I have talked about this, it's like been a long time since I've owned an energy services stock. But the empire, if you will, that is the United States, when the oil supply gets in out of line, or they're worried about peaking production in West Texas, they go, this is the most important thing for the things to work. And so if you have these countries that have invested some, they probably haven't had super tech like the America has in drilling, and Venezuela has like basically nothing. The Schlumberger, it's going to be hard for that to not have a narrative for a while. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
I mean, if there's
earnings,
going to be investment, the money flows to the Schlumbergers, the Halliburtons, and those.
exactly, I agree. I
It's
agree.
still on
I think
Weatherford.
Yeah, it was interesting. I'm looking.
yeah.
Schlumberger was down on the open this morning. It's just now back to even. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's good. I think that was a good coverage of it. It's a weird day. It's a crazy world. Let's hang in there. This is Wall Street Beats. Bob Morris, Berna, Ben. We'll see you tomorrow.
Keep us posted what you're seeing over there. You've got a unique perspective, but hopefully you're out of there soon.